We are less than 30 days to go for the first nominating contest in the Democratic presidential primary. On February 3rd, voters will caucus in Iowa. New Hampshire residents are going to vote in their primary on February 11th.
Coming down to it. Then it's on to Super Tuesday, where 14 states will decide who they want to be their nominee, according to the latest polling by Morning Consult. Vice President Joe Biden leads in Super Tuesday states, but nipping right at his heels, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Joining us with an update on the Sanders campaign, how they're feeling about the Super Tuesday polling, is Senior Advisor to the Sanders campaign, Chuck Rocha. Great to see you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, looking very good this morning. You got all the gear going.
New gear. When you're in charge of the swag, you get the best swag.
Yeah, look at that.
You know, not me, us.
Obviously, we want to start on the news of the day. Iran striking our military bases overseas. We're awaiting right now the president's comments on what are going to happen. And even before that, Senator Sanders started really making a contrast with Joe Biden. One of the things that he was talking about was Biden's bad judgment vis-a-vis Iraq. Let's take a listen to what the senator's been saying.
Joe Biden voted and helped lead the effort for the war in Iraq, the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in the modern history of this country. Joe Biden voted for the disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, which cost us millions of jobs. You think that's going to play well in Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania? You know, Joe Biden has been on the floor of the Senate talking about the need to cut Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Joe Biden pushed a bankruptcy bill, which has caused enormous financial problems for working families.
Now, Biden has been incredibly resilient in this race in spite of being the front runner essentially the whole time, taking incoming from a variety of directions, a number of candidates. Why do you think that this particular critique might land?
Look, Senator Sanders has been very, very stalwart on lots of issues throughout his career, but maybe more so on war, more so than anybody, being anti-war, thinking about our troops, thinking about getting involved in these. I mean, I think that's why you see him out front here. This is a direct difference between him and Mr. Biden. Like, there's a big difference in lots of things, but when it comes to these issues, you're going to see him draw a contrast because Senator Bernie Sanders, lock, stock, and barrel, has been against these interventions into these places, putting our troops at risk. Like, this is just cuts at the core of what he stood for. He serves on the Armed Services Committee. He understands this issue, and you're going to see him draw that contrast.
And so, Chuck, I mean, as we see this contrast drawn, we're going into Iowa in particular. How is the ground game looking in Iowa? You always have good insight into the TV markets, into the state of the race there. Put on the objective hat and just say, how are you guys doing? What's going on?
I want to give a shout out to the amazing group of volunteers. I didn't put this is not about me, but about us on the side of this jacket for just any reason. That's the core of what this campaign's about. We have hundreds and thousands of people coming into Iowa, unbeknownst to us, just showing up, wanting a walk packet, wanting to make phone calls. That's what makes this campaign different than every other campaign. We talked about this 6 months ago on this show, is if you build the infrastructure to be able to handle that influx when you catch fire in Iowa, that's how you win. That's how you see these late surging campaigns as they're peaking as they get towards Iowa. I don't care who was winning in Iowa 3 months ago. As we both know, it don't matter right now. But we've built an infrastructure with over 20 offices in every small community. So when you come to Iowa to volunteer, whether you're in the state or you come from a neighboring state, we're ready to give you a packet of people and say, these are the people who we need to go talk to ask them to show up on a Monday cold night in Iowa to stand in a room with 20 to a couple hundred of their friends and to pledge that you're going to be with Bernie Sanders. And if you're not viable with another candidate, we welcome you in. We want to be with us. And so I think that's a big difference in what I'm seeing out there on the ground that nobody else really has. They have segments of that. Some of them have got some offices. Some of them have a couple hundred people on the ground. But have they built the infrastructure to take in people and put them to work?
So the latest polling out of Iowa that we looked at, CBS News, YouGov, had a three-way tie. Bernie, Biden, Pete. Do you see Iowa as a must-win, and do you see Pete as a real threat for the nomination?
First of all, let's talk about that poll. When you know, and y'all talk about it on this show, when you do this, you're going to talk to people who are likely caucus goers. So if we're tied with people who are likely to caucus, think what you do when you interject 1, 2, 5, 6% of new people who show up, who are inspired for some reason to show up. I think they will be for Bernie Sanders. That changes that equation in that room. And you have to be, and I know I'm getting wonky, but you have to be
like that.
at 15% to be viable.
Right.
So there's a lot of people in that room, like Mr. Yang, Mrs. Gabbard, all these other folks. Elizabeth Warren now in many precincts, if they're at 15% or lower range, and you don't get a delegate, you have to go on a second round of voting. So the caucus precinct chairman piece, the people that you have volunteered to be in that room, who live in that community, who understand those people, are the key to organizing. That's not like any other primary that will happen maybe outside of Las Vegas or in Nevada. That's one of the key to organizing. We've been organizing and training precinct captains for 6 months in Iowa with people from Iowa, with Iowans. That's the key to winning this thing, is being able to be in that room. I can't be in that room, but your neighbors can be in that room talking to you about what happens when you do that second round of voting and what happens when you're a voter too short.
Yeah, and these are the key mechanics that actually can put you over the top. But let's go down, in the rest of the map. So we have New Hampshire, things are also looking good there. South Carolina, are you guys prepared? If say there's an Iowa and a New Hampshire, that's a big thing. That could be an Obama moment where black voters switch to Bernie Sanders. Are you poised to seize the ground in South Carolina? There was some trouble around last time. What have you made differently? And are you prepared in order to grab that fire whenever it catches hold?
I'm smiling because I think about being there last time and what we've built out this time. And what I've been saying on Twitter and to anybody else who will listen is, when you go into a community, and that's a really interlocked community there, when you listen to the community, when you hire the community, and when you invest in the community, you start winning. It's why we're winning Latinos, and we can get to that if we talk about California.
We will.
But this is when talking about South Carolina, the African-American vote there is a huge deal. Well, guess what? We went to the community, we listened to the community, and we hired African-American leaders from that community to run our operation. So it starts there. Have somebody who's valid in the community. Jessica down there's doing a great job. We have a team around her, this amazing black woman who's running our operation, who's putting together all the pieces. The offices are open, and we're prepared for that switch when it happens.
Yeah.
And then we started investing. The first time we talked to voters in South Carolina, we're in black-owned newspapers. Nobody does that first. Most people don't do that second, and most people just do that at the very end when they're thinking about GOTV. That's what makes this campaign different. We have turned campaigns backwards. Nobody comes in and talks to African-American voters first, and that's what we did to build that credibility in that community.
So let's talk about the Super Tuesday states looking down the road, because I think that's one of the, look, in my view, we've said it on the show, I think this race has come down to Biden versus Bernie, which is a phenomenal ideological battle for the direction of the Democratic Party and really the future of the country. Bernie has a lot of money in the bank. You all have been organizing out into Super Tuesday states, certainly into California, into Texas, et cetera. We put the polling up that had him nipping at the heels of Joe Biden in those Super Tuesday states. Is that consistent with what you're seeing in terms of the internal polling? And also, I always want to give you so much credit, although the credit, of course, is shared, but that poll showed him the reason he was right there behind Joe Biden was because of strength with Latino voters, winning Latino voters. What have you done that's been successful there, and how critical is that for Super Tuesday?
It may be the most critical piece of our election. We have a group of amazing people who follow this campaign, who are part of this campaign, whether they're young people, whether they're young people of color. Amongst young people of color, we're actually winning the biggest margin there with young African Americans. People don't realize, y'all realize that, but it's not talked about enough. But the Latino vote overall, when you spread that across Super Tuesday and across the first 5, and I can put California into the first 5, it's the biggest single effort, because a lot of campaigns haven't spent a lot of money and time courting or talking to that community. I knew it was a group or an electorate that we could go in with a consistent message from somebody who, guess what, is trusted, who's been saying the same thing, whose father was an immigrant who came here with no money. Sounds like my family and my grandfather, right? You can automatically find that commonality. But most establishment consultants and people within the party structure don't understand that, because they have another consultant saying, let's go talk to white suburban women and go after this swing vote and figure out why these people voted for Donald Trump, and listen to some other woke white boy tell them what they should be doing with Latinos. And it's just not how you do it. So we turned it on its head and listened to the community, hired a whole bunch of people from the community, and then spent millions of dollars saying, hey, this is Bernie Sanders. I think you're going to like him. And guess what? They liked him.
And so then California next down the road, I mean, it's a huge, huge state. Chuck, one of the most important things, I say it all the time now, is California, early primary or early voting starts on the same day as Iowa. So what are you getting ready in terms of that early voting in order to capitalize both on that, and then will it switch the dynamics of the race significantly the fact that people don't even realize that.
It's going to switch it immensely, but let me do a
Yeah.
public service announcement to everybody about California. It's something you need to know, what your viewers need to know. There are 6 million registered people in California that are registered as a non-party preference voter. That means they're registered, but they don't care about the Democrats, Republicans, they're down the middle. And because there's a jungle primary in California, if you're a permanent absentee voter, and you can be as an MPP, there's over 3.5 million of those. So you automatically get a ballot in the mail. But guess what? Because the presidential campaign is not on the jungle primary, you will not, let me say that again, you will not get a presidential ballot mailed to your house if you're an NPP voter. You have to either switch parties, or you have to call your county clerk or email them. They'll take an email and say, I would like for you to send it to me. Now, they'll send it to you, but there's a separate step for a lot of people in California who aren't aligned with the Democrats, who aren't registered as Republicans, who are regular, constant voters who won't get a presidential ballot. And this could be the difference in this election. Call your friends, call your neighbor, tell them to request that presidential ballot. Your county clerks will send it right out to you, but you will not automatically get it. Now, you can walk in person and vote. And ask for the ballot in person, absolutely. But you know, if you're a regular absentee voter, Crystal, that you're not going to be looking for your precinct when you voted by mail for the last 10 years.
Right. Last question for you. Wall Street Journal, this blew my mind, has an op-ed today that's like, get ready, Bernie might be president. The media has finally given your campaign a shot. What does that mean, and what are you getting prepared for in terms of the establishment types? What are they going to throw at you now that they actually have woken up to the possibility that Senator Sanders is in this race for real?
Look, you were around here in 15 and 16. We're ready for whatever they want to bring. And just like our campaign manager, Faz, said the other day on TV, is we ain't changing a damn thing. We're going to keep our head down. We're going to continue to work. We're going to listen to people around us, and we're going to empower regular Americans to be a part of this campaign. This ain't about me. This ain't about Bernie Sanders. It's about all of these people who've been showing up to actually change this electorate and change this election. And as long as we stay focused on that, there ain't nothing they can do to us.
Well, all right, Chuck, thank you so much for
Chuck.
joining us.
Thank
Always
you.
good.
Thank y'all.
Next on Rising, the presidential candidates have all weighed in with their concerns for U.S. troops, calls for de-escalation after last night's missile strike.
Journalist Aaron Mate is going to bring his views on how the 2020 candidates are all handling the Iranian crisis on the campaign trail. That when Rising continues.